Good morning, everybody. Just want to give you a couple of picks for this morning from earnings last night and today, earlier this morning. We have a few names in retail that have reported earnings this morning. Tiffany's, Best Buy, and DSW. And I'd like to just go over the analysis, the technical analysis on these stocks coming out of earnings. So this first one is Tiffany's. And you can see here that Tiffany's has been, quite positive lately. We've had some big moves in the name, and it's a retail name. So even though it is a high-end retailer, and that does put it in a different category than some of the other retail stocks, they do tend to show a little bit more strength. Relative strength. So here you can see Tiffany's has an all-time high of 141.64, which it hit last week. It has since kind of come off of that high and was right around this 20-day moving average. But today it's going to be gapping up to about 140. It could go higher. You still have an hour before the open. So what we're looking for is to see how it reacts around these pivots, right? So we have this red line, which is a longer-term trend line going back to 2011. And that trend line, could be a potential area of resistance. You can see it did get above there in the overnight, all the way up to 140, which is, nice round number. So we'll be looking for, if it continues to push through this trend line and gets above the overnight high, that could be a potential trade up to the all-time high of 141.64. If it doesn't show resistance at 141.64 and continues to push through, you would just keep trailing your stop up, because there's really no markers above that 141.64 level, which is the all-time high. So that's one play on Tiffany's. However, if it does show resistance at this red trend line or even at the all-time high, I would be looking to short the stock as it comes down back below the red trend line and then below this 138.18 level. So, which is a pivot on the stock from recent highs. So we have just a few areas, that we can look at for pivots. And then you can, if it starts to show weakness, that's something that we can talk about, to the downside. We can talk about some pivots here right now. So we do have the 138.18 that we talked about that we'd like to see it to going below that prior to any kind of short play. And then it could also come back down to the 129.95 pivot, which we have shown there. If it gets below that, which it very well could, but it doesn't seem very likely, but it could get all the way down to yesterday's low, which was 129.78. I'm sorry, it's not 129.78. It is 126.65 here. And then you can see that it also has a recent low, which is a little bit lower than 126.65 down here at 124.42. So these are kind of your levels to look at for Tiffany's as it gets into earnings this morning. So we're going to put some pivots on this chart with Tiffany's. It does look like it's showing some strength though, so just be prepared for a move to the upside as well. I mean, it's a retail name, and retail has been weak, but because Tiffany's is a little bit of a high-end, version of a retailer, and we saw what happened with Tapestry. We talked about Tapestry a couple of weeks ago. That had a huge move. Let's see how it's doing. Just out of earnings, this is the earnings move on Tapestry. It had a pretty big move up to, a trend line, a longer-term trend line. So, that's another high-end retailer. We have, and so for Tiffany's, if you just take a look at it, it does show some strength this morning. So we're going to be looking at that for potentially an upside move if it continues to push. If it shows resistance at the all-time high, we'll look for an area to roll over and take a short-term day trade short on this stock. So we can go either way here off of earnings. Next up is Best Buy. Best Buy is showing some Weakness this morning after earnings. It spiked down all the way to 75.46. Has since recovered a bit and is on its way back down. It's around 77.42 right now. So we have a pretty big down move. It's going to be gapping down today. Best Buy will. So this is over on the right side is the daily chart. And if you take a look at the weekly chart, I've drawn some longer term trend lines and additionally a complex trend line that spans several years, which could be potential targets to the downside. So right now, as it stands, it would be opening around 77.50, which is in this area, gapping down here. So you could have some potential for a continuation off the open down to this trend line here, or even down to the low of the day. So we have a couple of targets right off the bat. We have this 75.46, which is a overnight low. And then we have this longer term trend line around $74 as well. So those are two potential targets to the downside for Best Buy. Additionally, if it does cross below this 74 level, the next line in the sand, I guess, would be this complex trend line down here, and that's all the way down at the 68.23 area. And then you have a few pivots underneath that. So you have 67.55, 66.65, and then 64.98. So we'll be looking for weakness in Best Buy. Even if it's weakness off the open, we would look for it to breach the 75.46 level. Pardon. And then go down, to this trend line and where it could find some support here. But if it does not, we'd be looking for a continued down move. Has a pretty big window here, to go. So that's Best Buy. All right. So next up is DSW. So we have DSW, which is, another retailer. It's a shoe store. And it is going to be showing a little strength this morning. It had earnings last night. Excuse me. And you can see it's pretty strong off the open. DSW, the chart here is a little choppy. So if we take a look at a longer term time frame, you can see here that it has broken from a longer term downtrend a few weeks back. And it does have some pivots to the upside that you can utilize if you're looking to trade this stock to the upside. This is probably my least favorite of the three stocks, but because of this area of choppiness here, no clear kind of pivots in that area. But if it does show some extreme strength, it could go all the way up to this 39.56 level, which is the next kind of longer term pivot from 2014. So be looking at DSW if you're wanting to trade it. It could pull back and then show some strength off the open. It is pulling back rather from the 34.05 overnight high, which is about in this area right here. So which is in the middle of this window. So it could potentially show some continued upside momentum up to the 39.56 level. If it gets weak, if it shows some weakness off the open, it has gapped up in the overnight, but if it shows some weakness below this 30.70-ish area, it could come down to this trend line again. But honestly, DSW, where it is right now. I'll see where it is in an hour before the open, but where it is right now, there's really no trade that I would take on it off the open at all. So I would be leaning more towards that Tiffany or the Best Buy trades. So those are the earnings trades for today. Thanks for tuning in.